Hey guys, in this video, we're going to talk about the typical SEO monthly retainers that you can expect to hear and pay. Um, Typically speaking, I'd say that there's about 3 to 4 different categories and ranges. You'll typically see the SMB retainer, or I'm sorry, not even SMB, the S retainer, a small business retainer, which is, the local photographer, the local electrician, which is in the range of, 500 to 700 a month. Now, um, typically speaking, that's a very low dollar amount. But for smaller businesses and lower competition cities, it might be enough. Typically speaking, if you're a medium-sized business and you're paying 500 a month, frankly, the retainer is being spent on nothing. I mean, the retainer may not be large enough to actually do any, or large enough to do any work for a medium-sized business. Um, Typically speaking, in this day and age, I would never recommend going with an SEO consultant who's saying, "Oh, I'll get you to page one on 500 a month or 700 a month." I mean, it's hard to, unless this is a person who is trustworthy and has established himself as someone who constantly delivers. Because there's really no room for the guy to make a living and for the guy to pay expenses necessary to execute a campaign. I mean, how do you squeeze great content? How do you squeeze profit? And how do you squeeze paying, keeping the lights on? How do you pay for the staff on 500 for a client and still get them results? It's really difficult. So I hate to say it, but most of the time that I've seen a company charge this type of retainer, they're normally doing either nothing or they're doing some sort of automated link building solution, which will eventually get you into a penalty. There's really nothing there of value. In the 1,000 to 2,500 range, that's when there's enough room for the guy to actually do the work for you, to pay his bills, and to maybe even take home a few bucks and make a living. And you know, companies that are charging this price range come in all shapes and sizes. Many are just charging it because they know that if they ask for anything less, they won't be able to get it, and they're charging this dollar amount because it feels more believable. I mean, there are scam artists who do that. Um, in some cases, an SEO firm you hire will be able to deliver because there's enough money in there, and if the competition isn't too stiff, they can probably pull off something. Um, if the firm that you hire is too small, then they may not be able to deliver all the services needed. Simply because if you're spending $2,000 a month, you have certain ROI expectations, and if it's a one-man shop, hard to say if you'll be able to do all the work for your account, um, on his own, or even if it's two people. It all boils back down to strategy then, and philosophy and approach. On the other hand, if the firm is too big, say there's 10, 15 people, and you're paying them $2,000 a month, you're probably not going to be a priority client for them, and the budget that you give them might go towards paying their salaries as opposed to actually being spent on your account. So it's definitely, you have to find the sweet spot. Typically speaking, if you're a business and you want to get results, you got to be somewhere between the 1,000 to 2,500 range. But after you're in that range, the next thing that's going to influence whether you'll succeed or not is the vendor you work with. And when I say the vendor, I mean how many people they have, what's their philosophy, what's their approach, um, what's their general client distribution. Are they best suited to handle your account? Um, the final range is the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, $20,000 retainers. You typically see this with bigger accounts, you know, BBC, Kia, Lufthansa, Goldman Sachs. You'll typically see bigger companies like this spend this type of money. Um, they have bigger goals, they have bigger objectives, and they're not afraid to throw money around in order to get what they want. So the guy who's charging $8,000 a month for SEO will typically, do things like get them featured on Forbes, or not featured but mentioned. He'll try to tie his SEO campaign into press, PR, and stuff like this. He'll often source out certain activities. So if you pay a guy 8,000 a month, he might be spending 2,000 of that every month on a PR firm who's helping him get you placement in 10 different articles. It's not uncommon for this type of synergy to arise when you're playing with the bigger dollar amounts. Um, Bottom line, though, with a budget of this size, there should be really no excuse for the vendor's ability to get you something in terms of results. There should be a positive ROI associated with this spend, and moreover, he or she should be able to show you what they did, and whatever they do should impress the hell out of you. Um, Over a period of time, whether it be a year, 8 months, 12 months, you should expect some really serious business results from this investment. Um, the fact that there's an ROI attached to it is an assumption, and it's understood to be true because you're throwing some serious dollars around. Obviously, look, there's always going to be bigger companies out there like the Amazons and the Yelps and whatnot. But if you're in an industry where it's similar guys like yourself, trust me, you're spending enough money that where you should be able to see some value. And obviously, there's a lot of the ranges of these SEO retainers and what to expect will depend on the vendor you work with. So if you're working with, a smaller to medium-sized vendor who exhibits creativity, you're going to get more mileage out of your retainer simply because they're creative and they're hungry and they want to do more interesting things, and they're going to think outside the box. So for example, a lot of smaller end SEO companies have realized that there's this really creative way to get .edu backlinks. What they do is they create a scholarship for a company, and then they manually email 100 different colleges. And so this type of creativity will better suit your purposes and your goals if you can find that vendor. Um, so there are no hard and fast rules, but typically you look at the retainer and you look at the type of vendor you're working with, and you'll figure it. And most of the time, you'll be able to figure out what the conclusion of the relationship will be. So that kind of concludes this segment of the SEO pricing guide article to which this video is a companion. Um, you can read the entire SEO pricing guide by clicking the link in the footer of this video, where you'll find not just information about what typical SEO monthly retainers are, but a little bit more about the psychology of how to vet an SEO company, all the things to consider, and there's some other great videos there as well. So thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you again soon.